Often in history, our capabilities as society have outrun our ideas. Years after the phonograph was first invented, people still didn't listen to pre-recorded music. Why would they? For thousands of years up until that point, music had been participatory. The idea of sitting down, listening to the same thing over and over again, coming out of a box, it made no sense. For people to appreciate pre-recorded music took a change in their mode of thinking. Today I would like to introduce you to the 21st century phonograph, a new vision for welfare in America. Now most people here probably haven't been on welfare, but we've all had a job, and if you're like me and you're graduating soon, you're probably going to have a job sooner than you like. So I'll ask you to imagine for a second, if you didn't have to work and save, work and save, work and save every day just to survive, how would your life change? I argue it would change for the better, which is why the United States should implement a bold new welfare system that provides economic security for all, not just the poorest among us. We're facing this country with a fundamentally changing workplace that puts all of our futures in doubt. And the inefficient welfare system we have now can't cope, and we need to take concrete new action. The two main things we need to understand about this situation is that, one, technology is destroying jobs faster than they can be created. Take my phone. It's not too impressive, but with a camera and an app on this phone, I can scan my eye, take my own prescription, send it out, order contacts, and have them waiting for me when I get home. That all used to be done by an eye doctor. Now it's done by my phone. That's technological unemployment. Economic doctrine used to say that this was impossible, but there's mounting evidence that this just isn't the case. Since 1974, the Department of Labor reports that worker productivity has risen 80%, but worker wages have only risen 11%. Now this has long been portrayed as a low-skill problem, a problem for Detroit auto workers, but not us. But this isn't the case either. The Economic Policy Institute has found that the demand for high school workers, college graduates, us, has been falling for the past 15 years. And as we get knocked down the ladder to low-skill jobs, low-skill workers are knocked out completely. The second thing to understand is the sprawling state of welfare in America. There are currently 79 different means-tested programs provided by the federal government, not to mention state. And they provide cash, food, housing, social services, many conflicting, many overlapping. If this room was representative of the American worker, U30 would be working without benefits. U35 would. This burden is only growing. A 2014 congressional report found that we spend almost $1 trillion annually on welfare programs. And it's the fastest growing part of the budget. Faster growing than defense and faster growing than Social Security. This has created two major harms. The first is that it has created a land of inequality and inopportunity. You can see the inequality in the amount of income in this country that goes to capital versus labor. Now, capital here refers to things like stocks. It's ownership of the technology that we're talking about, while labor is wages, paychecks. U.S. Census data reports that amount of income going to labor is at its lowest point since 1950, which in practical terms means that the very amount of money it's possible to make by working for a paycheck has declined drastically. This has led to a crisis of inopportunity. A 2001 Federal Reserve report found that your income is more heritable than your height and your weight. Here is where American optimism hurts us. As much as we like to believe that anyone, if they just work hard, can get ahead, this belief just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. As hard as it is to say, America is not the land of opportunity. And until we can admit what the country is, we will not be able to make it to the place it could or should be. Technologically driven inequality is an unconventional problem because technology is not getting worse. So this problem is only going to get worse. And so it will require an unconventional solution. The second main harm is the inefficiency of our welfare state. Despite all our largesse, often the people who need it most don't get it. Applications are lengthy, confusing, bureaucratic, so much so that the Center for Budget Priorities estimates that 58% of aid goes to middle-class families, not the poor. And then there's the dreaded welfare queen. Because our benefits are often tied to unemployment, we incentivize people not to work, lest they lose their aid. So what's the sum total of all these efforts and our trillions of dollars? Well, UNICEF reports that we are second to last out of all developed nations in child poverty. So when you go home tonight, look out your car, look out your dorm room window, look out at Nashville, and imagine that you're a hungry kid from a poor family. And then remember that you would be better off in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, or Bulgaria than you would be in America. There's a solution to both these problems, and it's as simple as it is sweeping. Congress institutes a radical new welfare system called a basic income, or Social Security for all adults. Instituting a basic income will begin by repealing all current welfare programs, federal and state, and replacing them with a monthly check to every adult that raises you to the poverty line. These checks will be unconditional and universal for every citizen over 21. And it will be funded by removing current welfare programs and raising taxes on the wealthy. Now, this may appear utopian, but it's not. Past supporters are as diverse as Martin Luther King and Richard Nixon. And just last year, there was a ballot initiative in Switzerland trying to pass a basic income. And if it can succeed abroad, then that success can filter home. It's easy to see where this diverse coalition comes from when you consider that a basic income fulfills liberal and libertarian dreams. Overnight, poverty would be done, and we would be better able to confront the inequality inherent in an automated workplace. Now, we can't turn back the tide on technology, nor do we want to, but we can better share the benefits of a more productive society. A basic income would also solve the problem of an inefficient welfare state by cutting it out wholesale and putting control back in the hands of individuals so they can decide for themselves what they need and what's best for their own life. Now, there are two main counter-arguments to a basic income. The first goes like this. If you're paying people to live, well, why are they going to bother working? However, this argument mistakes a basic income for our welfare queens from before. A basic income is unconditional, and it raises everyone to the poverty line. So you can only improve your situation by working, so that incentive is still there. And one of the only real-life experiments to test this agreed. For 5 years in the 70s, a small town in Canada had a basic income. There was a small rise in unemployment as people like mothers with newborn babies left to go take care of them. But it was negligible. And there are many other benefits that weren't anticipated. Crime rates fell, hospitalization rates fell, high school graduation rates rose. Clearly, this was no society of slackers. The second argument is the prohibitive cost. It's impossible because it's just too expensive. To this, all I can say is, let's crunch some numbers. Raising every American adult to the poverty line would cost $2.1 trillion annually. A hefty amount. But remove all current welfare programs, and now we're down to $1.2 trillion. Add in all the revenue measures that have been talked about in Congress over the past 5 years, such as a carbon tax or repealing the temporary Bush tax cuts, and we're down to $750 billion. Raise taxes on the 1% back to the 1984 levels under Reagan, and now we're down to $350 billion, half the defense budget. This cost keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and we haven't even done anything drastic yet. Clearly, far from being impossible, this is completely feasible. In the end, the real reason we don't have a basic income and economic security for all is because we have made conscious political choices not to. However, in the face of a fundamentally changing workplace that throws all our futures in doubt, and an inefficient welfare state that can't cope, this won't cut it anymore. When we look back at work conditions 150 years ago, children working 80 hours a week in sweatshops, we scoff at that and look at them as backwards. How will future generations view us? Clearly, when it comes to work, we need to change our mode of thinking. Thank you.